Hey everybody, KennedyHawk here from the MCM team. FFG just put out this awesome article called Trickster Takeover, which is about a new scenario pack coming out in Marvel Champions. I briefly skimmed the article in the last 5 minutes, and I thought I could go through it again with you all so you could see my initial thoughts on what looks like an awesome scenario pack. So it is May 22nd, 2025, and we have this Trickster Takeover article. The link to this article will be in the YouTube, comment section so you can view it. And I'm going to put this out as an audio cast as well. So I'll probably read the cards that I'm talking about as I go through them. So bear with me a little bit. But we've got this awesome picture of Loki and Enchantress. And as you go through this article, there's a lot of cool flavor here. Villains come in all shapes and sizes. Some are large and brutish, others surround themselves by like-minded minions. Some of the most dangerous villains, however, are the ones who use cunning and trickery to manipulate the world and win. And that is what this pack is about. It is a 78 card scenario pack, guest designed by former Marvel Champions designer Michael Boggs. So Michael Boggs was the lead on Galaxy's Most Wanted and Sinister Motives. So if those are the types of scenarios you like, you might love some of these. And it comes with 2 brand new scenarios. We haven't had a 2 scenario pack since Green Goblin. So it's been a while. And I'm assuming these are going to be, well, I know because I skimmed, right? These are going to be the 2 villains. We're going to have an Enchantress scenario and a Loki scenario. It lets us know that in addition, the Loki scenario you can play as a single table or in a brand new epic multiplayer mode, which has happened in other LCG games like Lord of the Rings and Arkham Horror. We've tried to do some very amateur ones at Con of Heroes, but this is the first official one, and it looks awesome. So we get this nice card spread with an Enchantress villain, a Loki God of Lies, a Treachery Spellblast, a Minion Cinder, and then something Focus. And I think most of these are shown later, so we'll go through those when we get to them. But let's start off following the article by talking about the Enchantress scenario. So it's got 32 cards, so it's a thick encounter deck. 15 hit points per player in standard, maybe a little bit more in expert, we'll find out. Right off the bat, Enchantress hits heroes with a Hypnotic Gaze, so let's look at that. It is a permanent attachment. Your identity gains the Defiant trait, and if there are 5 or more charm counters here, remove each charm counter from here and flip this card. The article here mentions that there are 5 different copies, each with a different enchantment on the opposite side. So when you deal these out at the beginning of the game, you won't know which one you're going to get. While still on the Hypnotic Gaze side, your identity gains the Defiant trait, representing your resistance to the temptations of Enchantress. And then after you get enough charm counters, this is going to flip over. And you can get charm counters from the villain right here. So Enchantress is a 2-scheme, 1-attack villain with a forced response. After Enchantress attacks you, place 1 charm counter on the enchantment card in your play area. So that means you're going to want to bring status conditions like stunned, or in multiplayer you can try to have someone always tank other people's attacks so that charm counters are mainly focused on one player and things like that. There's also other cards like this Crown here. Crown of the Enchantress is a attachment with 3 boost icons attached to Enchantress. In expert mode, she gains Stalwart. Forced response, after Enchantress schemes against you, place 1 charm counter on the enchantment card in your play area. Hero action, each player exhausts their identity and takes 1 damage. Discard this card. This is a cool way to grief everyone, because you can make other people take 1 damage. This is an interesting card where you are using other people's identities as a part of the cost. So I'm curious how that will work out, and if you can convince the table to do it. It means you're going to have to not defend for a round, so it could be a little tricky. Pun intended. We also have the Enthralled Lackey, who looks like an awesome construction worker. 2-scheme, 1-attack, 3-health minion. Quick Strike. Forced response, after this minion attacks you, place 1 charm counter on your enchantment card. Boost, choose to place a charm encounter or confuse your identity. So lots of charming charm counters. So once we get enough charm counters on our Hypnotic Gaze side, these will flip over, and they show us 2 of the 5 with a new type of action. So let's look at Trance of Greed. It's an enchantment that is permanent. Your identity gains the Enthralled trait, and I'm assuming there's cards that will interact with these traits, or it's just for flavor. Not sure. When revealed, you are confused. Otherwise, take 2 damage. Okay, not that interesting. Forced, I guess it is interesting because it could just destroy you if you were at 2 hit points after an attack. So, I mean, I guess don't get low on health is what I'm seeing here. A forced action, exhaust this card, draw 1 card, then play that card, paying its cost. If you cannot, take 1 damage. So, in the article, they mentioned that a forced action is an action that you have to take before the player phase ends. You don't have to take it during your turn. So if you have a bunch of allies and you're already at your ally limit, you might want to wait until the second player's turn, take this action, you draw the card, you play it if you can, but since you can't play an ally out of turn, it stays in your hand and you would take a damage instead. So there's going to be some trickery and tomfoolery once you know what your, what were they called? Enchantment is. We see another one here, the Trance of Wrath. Permanent, your identity gains the Enthralled trait. When revealed, search the top 5 cards of the encounter deck for a card and reveal it. Sounds horrible. A forced action, exhaust this card, take 1 damage, and deal 2 damage to a minion. So you have to do that sometime during the player phase. And they're both exhaust this cards, so they're only once. Okay. In addition to the forced action on the trance side, you gain your enchantment from your enchantment tracker. You can also, in addition to the forced action on the trance side, the trait you gain from your enchantment attachment can also determine how some of Enchantress cards work against you. Okay, so it does do that. I skipped this paragraph earlier. Cards like Do My Bidding. So Do My Bidding is a treachery. When revealed, if your identity has the Defiant trait, choose one. If your identity has the Enthralled trait, do both. Search the encounter deck and discard pile for a minion and reveal it, and then shuffle. Search the encounter deck and discard pile for a side scheme and then reveal it and shuffle. So this becomes like a Shadows of the Past in the later half of the scenario. This is a really cool way for the villain to feel powered up in the second half of the scenario and might be a villain that pushes you towards a tempo play style where you try to race this clock before you have these forced actions thwarting you. Here's some more examples. Spell Blast. If your identity has the Defiant trait, choose one. Enthralled trait, do both. Enchantress Schemes with +1 scheme. Enchantress Attacks with +1 attack. The +1s are in expert mode, and holy cow, this is a Michael Boggs card if I've ever seen one. So in the later half of the scenario, this card reads the villain schemes and attacks. Good luck. Spellbound is a side scheme. When defeated, each player whose identity has the Defiant trait places 1 charm counter on the enchantment card in their play area. Each player whose identity has the Enthralled trait discards a card they control, and it has a crisis icon. It does not scale per player, just 4 threat on it. We have Enthralled Brute. Enthralled Brute is a 1 scheme to attack 4 health minion, Brute, and Enthralled with Guard. While this minion is engaged with the player whose identity has the Enthralled trait, it has 3 additional hit points. Okay, I'm liking this. And here's our main scheme. It is a 6 per player main scheme for 1B. Forced Interrupt. When a charm counter would be placed on an enchantment card in your play area, if your identity has the Enthralled trait, place 1 threat here instead. It starts at 1 per player, and it goes up 1 per player per round, and the threshold is 6, which is really, really low in solo. There will not be a lot of flipping unless you have confusion against Enchantress, it seems. And it does not say that players lose when this scheme is completed, so there must be another scheme. That was card 4. Let's look here and see this Hypnotic Gaze they showed us was 7 through 11. So there should be 4, 5, 6. There could be like another setup card in there that we don't know. But at least a more than 1 main scheme. Cool. Before we preview the second scenario, it's only fitting to talk about the special encounter set from this pack. Trickster Magic. So here's this special enthralled encounter set. We can read one of these cards, or a few of these cards here. These range from tricky side schemes like the Trickster Tango, which has these 2 villains dancing. The villain gains Stalwart and has 2 acceleration icons on this 4 scheme side scheme. Love Triangle, attached to an ally you control, otherwise this card gains Surge. The attached ally cannot attack the villain or defend against the villain's attack. Exhaust attached ally and spend a mental resource to discard this card, so the villain is seducing your ally. And then comes with a set of 4 enthralled minions. Absorbing Man has Guard, Victory 1. When Absorbing Man is engaged with you, he gains +X attack, where X is the printed cost of the highest card you control. When defeated, the player who defeated this minion puts the set-aside Absorbing Man ally into play under your control. And they do not show... Well, they do show us the Absorbing Man ally. So here is the Absorbing Man ally. He's a 3-cost, 1 scheme for 2 consequential, 1 attack for 2 consequential, 3 health ally. With linked, victory 0, and does not count against your ally limit. When Absorbing Man attacks or thwarts, exhaust an upgrade you control. Absorbing Man gets plus X for his power, where X is that card's printed cost, to a maximum of plus 3. So basically, when you defeat one of these minions, it's interesting that some of these pop up in their own tab, and some open within the screen. Fix this link, FFG. It looks like the minions are Absorbing Man, Titania, who is going to be an overkilling minion, oh gosh. Whirlwind, who is going to deal indirect damage for each side scheme in play, and Zax, who's going to discard cards from your deck looking for energy resources, just like the last one we saw. And presumably, I guess let's read those. Yeah, and the card fan up here, each of these brings out a set-aside linked ally into play under your control. I really like this. I think I'll use this in many different encounter sets that aren't just Loki or Enchantress. All right, let's get on to the main event, the God of Lies. After dealing with Enchantress, our heroes have little time to breathe before they are thrust into a conflict with Loki. Now, we see Loki, God of Lies, up here with dash for scheme and attack, and then 4 different Lokis in the spread here. One that does something with boost cards, one that's after a treachery, place some threat. After a treachery, do some damage. If the top card of the encounter deck is a treachery, Loki gains plus to his stats. And they all have, scrolled way too fast, different like glowy edges so that you can identify which one is which. So that's kind of cool. As we mentioned earlier in this article, this scenario marks the introduction of a brand new, super spectacular, epic multiplayer mode for the game. Loki's avatars have spread across the globe, and the heroes must work together like never before to shatter the mischievous god's illusions and bring him down once for all. To kick things off, we have a primary villain card, Loki, God of Lies. Loki, God of Lies has 10 per player fewer remaining hit points. If Loki, God of Lies has 10 per player fewer remaining hit points, he'll flip this card. And he's 20 per player. And then blah, blah, blah. This is the true Loki, and the one that everybody currently participating in this scenario needs to defeat in order to win. Sounds simple enough, right? Except nothing is as it seems with the masterful Trickster. You cannot directly attack or damage Loki. This is thanks to Worlds Collide, which is a global main scheme. So each per player icon on Loki, God of Lies, counts as the total number of players in all game areas. So if we have 2 tables with 4 players each, that 10 per player threshold would be 80. When there's 80 or less life left on Loki, we would flip him. Each triple per player icon, which is on this Worlds Collide side scheme, counts towards the total number of groups in all pods. So again, if we had 2 tables, this 2 with the triple, I guess I haven't read this out loud, but Worlds Collide is a main scheme. It says 2, and then it has 3 of the per player icon on the top left. That would mean there's 4 on this Worlds Collide with 2 tables. Cards cannot affect this scheme or Loki, God of Lies unless they refer to those cards by title. If this stage is completed, the players lose the game. It does not go up every round. There are just dashes in those normal spots. So something is going to place threat onto that scheme and potentially push us towards a defeat. So let's look at 2 of these Lokis. We have an avatar and an illusion here. We have Loki the Rascal, A1, 1 scheme, 1 attack, forced response. After you resolve a boost card during Loki the Rascal's activation, if that card is a treachery, either deal it to yourself as a face-down encounter card or spend 1 resource of any type. Forced response, when the villain would be defeated, place 5 per player shatter counters here and flip this card instead. The flipped side is Fading Figment. It has dash for scheme, dash for attack. When revealed, shatter the illusion. See the set-aside Shatter the Illusion card, which we'll look at here in a minute. Choose a group in your pod. So if there's only 2 tables playing, I'm assuming the other table will be in your pod. Place a synergy counter on the United Front environment equal to the number of players in their group. So we'll look at what those are here in a minute. It says that there are 4 different versions of Loki. We just looked at Loki the Rascal. There's Loki the Miscreant, who after you resolve a treachery, places one threat in the main scheme and one threat on a side scheme. We have Loki the Knave. After you resolve a treachery, deal 1 damage to an identity and 1 damage to your identity and to an ally you control. And Loki the Wretch. When Loki the Wretch activates against you, discard the top card of the encounter deck. If a treachery card was discarded, Loki will get +1 scheme, +1 attack. And I think they all have that 15 per player health that you have to deal with. So we do 15 per player damage to this avatar of Loki, and then that places these shatter counters. So let's go look at what Shatter the Illusion is. So Shatter the Illusion is when a fading figment is revealed, follow these steps to shatter Loki's illusion. Remove each shatter counter from fading figment. Then deal damage to Loki God of Lies equals to the number of shatter counters removed this way. Swap the fading figment in play with a random set-aside Loki villain, avatar of Loki side face up. Then set the hit point dial back to what the hit point value was and deal each player an encounter card. Michael Boggs special. Lots of encounter cards. Should be fun. So it looks like when we defeat a Loki who has 15 health per player, we'll get to put, let's say we had 3 players at our table, that's 45 points of damage. We'll get to put 15 shatter counters on this card. We'll flip the card and then deliver that 15 to the true Loki that we're trying to defeat. And remember, we have to deal 10 per player to him to move on to like the next phase. So you basically have to defeat 2 shadows. But there are other ways to gain these shadow counters before you flip a Loki. So here's a side scheme, Lofty Goals. When defeated, place 2 shatter counters on the avatar of Loki villain. So you want to play one way or another, grab this side scheme with an acceleration token so you can get some extra progress towards the villain. We have Grendel. He is a guard minion with 6 health, 1 scheme, 1 attack, brute, and dark elf traded. Forced response. When Grendel attacks, discard the top 3 cards of the encounter deck. For each treachery, he's going to get +1 attack, but when defeated, you place 3 shatter counters on the avatar of Loki. Malekith. When defeated, place 2 shatter counters on the avatar of Loki with 2 scheme, 2 attack, 5 hit points, and another ability that deals with treachery cards. Lots of 3 boost icon cards, too. So there's going to be all sorts of ways that you can get extra counters to make progress a little bit faster. So you can imagine if you have a player and you one way or another to get Lofty Goals out, you can get 2 extra shatter counters out, but that's not 2 per player. And then you could also bring out Malekith and get another 2. Bring out Grendel using some sort of minion summoning and get another 3. And now you've gotten 7 extra shatter counters on top of your 5 per player. So if you're playing in a 2-player game, that would be like 17 counters of the 20 you need to make any progress. We talked about fading figments already and how it triggers this Shatter the Illusion. So that's an interesting way to deal damage to the villain. You have to build it up on your Loki, but you won't have to walk over there constantly and deliver damage, which is kind of cool. Next we have Mischief and Mayhem. That is the main scheme. It is 8 threat per player, very low. When this scheme would be completed, remove all threat from here and place 1 threat on Worlds Collide. Whoa. So Worlds Collide is 2 per number of groups. So if you're playing at a single table, you can only place 2 threat on Worlds Collide. So you can let this main scheme pop 1 time, but you can't let it pop a 2nd time or you've lost the game. Forced Interrupt. When an identity would be defeated, change that identity's form to Alter Ego, set its hit point dial to 1, and place 1 threat on Worlds Collide instead. So again, you don't want to be defeated, because 2 defeats, or 2 scheme pops, or 1 of each, and all of a sudden, Loki has won the day. So that's a really interesting main scheme. You're going to have to be really careful with it, because 8 per player is pretty low. In 4-player, that's a lot more manageable, but in 2-player pods or something like that, this could get really nasty really fast. This seems pretty hard, but fortunately, defeating Avatar of Loki also added some synergy counters to a synergy environment. They mentioned the United Front environment, so let's check this out. It is a permanent environment with a max of 1 per player synergy counters here, and it's a resource. So remove 1 synergy counter from here to generate 2 wild resources, and it does not exhaust. So I think it said when you defeated Loki, you'd choose another table in your pod and give that table 1 per player synergy counters based on how many players were at that table. And let's check real here. Choose a group in your pod. So it could be your own group. In Epic Multiplayer, I recommend you do not choose your own group unless absolutely necessary, because what we found in our Carnage scenario was that meant that people wouldn't go to other groups. So I'll probably, if we're playing this in Epic Multiplayer in my area, house rule this to be you have to pass it to another table, because I like that interaction. But Resource Generator in United Front, some really cool art. We have another setup environment, or permanent environment, Domineering Force, Synergy, max 1 per player synergy counters. When a friendly character attacks, remove 1 synergy counter from here. That attack deals 4 additional damage. This could be really cool for no quarter decks and stuff like that. Cool, so we have these bonuses that we can pass from table to table. And there was that threshold of 10 per player when Loki would flip to his second stage. So Loki God of Lies Stage 2. When revealed, each group in Standard Mode attaches the set-aside Intense Focus to the avatar of Loki villain in their game area. Each group in Expert Mode flips the Intense Focus attachment to its total focus side. Each group in Standard Mode away, and you then flip it if you are in Expert Mode. Maybe? That's what I'm going to assume it does. Alright, if Loki God of Lies is defeated, all players in all groups win the game, and he's sustaining that damage from the first round. So if you do a little bit of extra damage, it's going to deal all that damage to Loki, and then he'll flip. So we would need to do another, you're about 50% of the way through the scenario when he flips. Let's check out this Intense Focus for Standard Mode. It is permanent. Each group in Standard Mode attaches their set-aside Intense Focus. It doesn't give us the setup card or anything like that, does it? Yeah, I'm going to guess that, I guess I skimmed the text. I'm going to assume that this Intense Focus starts set aside. Permanence, the avatar of Loki gets plus 2 health per player hit points and gains steady, plus 1 scheme, plus 1 attack attachment. He is very focused now. When revealed in Standard Mode, discard the top 2 cards of the encounter deck and the top 5 cards of each player deck. The 5 cards of each player deck, I don't know why they're still going to that. It never puts a lot of pressure on players, but it can push you to get an extra encounter card, so I guess it can be interesting. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. Yeah, I'm going to assume that when you attach the set-aside Intense Focus, you also reveal it to attach it. So this gets attached to Loki, and it's horrible. In Expert, this is actually going to be a total focus. So this is where I don't know, do they want us to, each group in Standard Mode attaches the set-aside Intense Focus villain to Avatar of Loki in their villain game. Each player in Expert Mode flips the Intense Focus. Let's read. Avatar for the rest of the game. Total Focus will flip over and resolve that effect again, basically, which sounds horrible, horrible, horrible. And I guess this, when revealed, is in Standard Mode, so it won't trigger at the start of the game if you're playing in Expert Mode. Oh, that's a really sneaky thing. Okay, Total Focus does the same thing. Discard the top 2 per player cards of the encounter deck and top 5 cards of each player deck. Find Dark Scepter and reveal it. If it did not enter play, then the villain's going to gain a tough card. And Dark Scepter is a plus 1 attack, horrible attachment. The avatar of Loki villain gains Stalwart. Treacheries cannot be canceled. There's a big treachery theme here. And hero response, after you resolve a treachery, spend 2 resources of the same type to discard this card. Wow. And there we have it. With these manipulative tactics, can we take these guys down? We'll find out. Look forward to taking on the Tango of Tricksters, when the Trickster Takeover Scenario Pack arrives in August. So go pre-order your copy right now. Awesome article by Peter S. We're going to click like, even though we're not logged into whatever that is, because we may as well. And this looks awesome. So, I mean, my initial reaction is I'm blown away. I'm super excited that we have an official Epic Multiplayer Scenario Pack for Marvel Champions, and just Scenario Packs in general. We haven't had one in a while. And they're some of my favorite products from Marvel Champions because I really like scenarios. I I can smell Michael Boggs all over this pack. I'll say that for sure. I think it is going to be a pretty tricky pack to take on. I think it's not necessarily going to be as forced as the Hood to go into tempo, but I can see how in both scenarios you're kind of forced to like keep a pace, which I really really like. I'm excited to see more scenario design that leans that way. So I hope we get to see from. Do they say he's on the design team? Guest designed by former Marvel Champions designer Michael Boggs. Sweet. So really cool. I think I'm more excited for Enchantress as a standalone scenario than I am for Loki, because I really think Enchantress is going to push this tempo, faster pace of game that I'm still really growing to love more recently. More on that next week on our Monday video release. But I think like overall in the pack, I'm really more excited about Loki, because I think seeing how FFG, or Michael Boggs, I guess, designs an epic multiplayer scenario should be really cool. I love the passing of effects. I'll be curious to see how often they go off, or if we just, since you only have to defeat 2 versions of Loki, or I guess 4 to get to the final result, how often you'll end up with counters on your synergy. Is that what they were called? Synergy upgrade? Synergy counters? Domineering force. Synergy environments. There we go. Should be really cool. I'm super excited. I know the big complaint about Loki from Mad Titan Shadow is that he doesn't feel like Loki. He feels like Thanos, because you're forced to use that Infinity Gauntlet, and you are not here. You've got the same theme of multiple Lokis jumping around these different avatars. And I also like that it kind of plays into Thor's Nemesis Loki with the whole treachery card theme. Comes with a modular pack. I don't see things that I don't like, other than a slew of encounter cards, which could be interesting. I'm going to rave again. I really like the Enchantress theme here. I like that it pushes you into tempo, and if you can't outpace and race her, you're going to have the villain power up midway through the scenario. It's something that we've talked about in Marvel Champions forever, that it seems like is finally happening. It seems like early in the game's design, and even up until maybe a year or two ago, the way to increase difficulty in a scenario was to pump the stats and dump a bunch of encounter cards at you at the beginning of the scenario. And that's not what this is doing. Instead, it's saying as the heroes grow stronger, Enchantress will also grow stronger. And that is really exciting. I'm excited to see a villain scale, hopefully at the same rate that the heroes scale. We'll see if they can thread that needle when this pack comes out in August. So, check out the article for yourself. Don't tell me, or do tell me, if your opinions are different than mine. Don't necessarily just default to my opinions. But I think this scenario pack looks rad, and I can't wait to get a hold of it. All right, see you next week. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.